Ramsey the Great.
All right. Now, before this fight, I took it upon myself to go watch some of J.J. Aldrich's early fights. And she does not seem like she is in her athletic prime. She just seems like she's in her cerebral prime. And if she had the athleticism that she had when she was younger, she would be a little better. I believe she'd be a little better than she is at flyweight. Now remember, when she was younger, she was at strawweight. Now, this was rather one-sided fight. But Aldrich didn't really make it look easy. And I think if she was an elite fighter, it would have looked easy. Lee looked like the same old deteriorated fighter that she's been looking over the past few fights. Now in the title, I think I titled it JJ 1-2 Aldrich. Because that's all she throws is a 1-2. She believes in that 1-2. You got a good 1-2. Now, if Phil was my fighter, I saw she had a good 1-2 in the gym. I'll build on that. If you got a 1-2 that very few girls can avoid, at least when they're standing there striking with you, you got good accuracy, a good straight, left hand. She's a southpaw. Orthodox fighters are already uncomfortable with your stance. This is what Manon takes advantage of. Being a southpaw and having a good 1-2. But Aldrich don't have Manon's athleticism. So she can't build on that 1-2 like Manon has. She reminds me of Manon as far as her 1-2. And I'm pointing that out because at times, or at least later in the fight, I thought that it was appropriate. In fact, I know it was appropriate for JJ to add something else onto that 1-2. You want to throw a jab, straight cross, and you're landing the shot or the combination. You see that you're landing it. You see your opponent's not trying to counter it. Put something else on it. At least after you see how she reacts to it. She don't want to counter. And generally, she's still buzzed. When you land the straight left, she's still buzzed. She was buzzed every time. Lee had to recover. She had to make a complete reset. When you see that, you better follow up with a left hook or something. Follow up with a kick, something. Aldridge just seemed limited. And sometimes it looked like JJ's falling asleep in there. If y'all notice, in the third round, it was Andrea Lee who cranked up the intensity. I don't know how many of y'all noticed that. It wasn't JJ. And I knew that what happened. I knew that if either fighter was going to crank up the pace first, it would be Andrea Lee. Because as long as things is going JJ's way, she generally will not crank up her activity unless she has you hurt, seriously hurt. This is something I'm noticing in a lot of, I've been noticing this. I've been talking about this for years. Before, I was referring to it as a lack of killer instinct. Remember, I was going on a, semi-crusade about more fighters needing a killer instinct, more women needing a killer instinct. And, being kind of frustrated. I think I even made a video where I said I was going to congratulate or something all the fighters with a killer instinct. Aldridge don't really have it. And I made a brief prediction on this fight in a video I uploaded earlier. And I picked Aldridge to win. And I said that Andrea Lee tends to decline after her nose starts bleeding. Now, I don't think her nose is bleeding in this fight. But it looked like Aldridge was trying to make it bleed. Like she was targeting her nose. Like everybody knows, just break. Her nose easy to break. And once it's broken, she starts to decline. But Lee was still taking flush shots to the face. And it looked like it was bothering her. Starting to dampen her own offense. Putting doubt into her head. She wasn't really cranking it up. Even when she cranked it up in the third, it wasn't nothing that serious. Nothing that Aldridge couldn't respond to or tame. And she tamed her. Soon as Lee started to get a little aggressive, tried to get more aggressive, as soon as Aldridge became aggressive in response, she tamed her. Now, for that being the sixth straight fight that she's lost, if the UFC decides to keep her at this point, then they got some type of personal liking for her. She just set a record for women. She just set a record of a losing streak record for the women. No other female can match her as far as a losing streak. It's so bad that the two media outlets that reported on this fight both put that in the headlines. They thought that was really the highlight of the fight. So there's no way that UFC, McMaynard, whoever, there's no way that they can't be mindful of this. So Lee might get cut. What will she do if she gets cut? That's a question for a lot of fighters. She's 36. Now, if she get cut, I'd imagine she'd end up at one of these other organizations, maybe PFL or something like that would take her in. But I don't even think she would do much in any of the other divisions. In fact, I doubt that she could win the Invicta title again. Or not the Invicta title, the LFA title. Remember, she used to be the LFA champion, believe it or not. Andrea Lee. So something to think about. Now, Aldridge, let's get back to her athleticism. As she's moved up in weight, she's become a lot more stationary, flat-footed, and low volume. I'm talking about JJ Aldridge. This is a good summary, the best summary I can give her. Because she fights pretty much the same way today that she fought early in her career. Early in her career, even on Tough, before she was officially in the UFC, she was primarily a boxer. Always been but go back and look at those earlier fights. She moved around like a butterfly. Real light on her feet. The difference in athleticism is obvious. With the style that she uses now, I don't think it's an improvement. She'd be better if she was still relatively as athletic as she was back then. And if you look at her back then, she's gained a lot of weight. I don't know, maybe a thyroid issue, medical, or she likes to eat, like to smoke weed, or whatever, something keeping the pound up on her. It's too hard to get to 115. But I don't know if this style, and now, most fighters are going to have to beat her on the feet, I suspect, because she seems kind of strong. Aldridge, she seems pretty strong to me. And that's the thing. Just think about it. Aaron took her out on the feet. She was giving her business on the feet. All because Aaron was more active. JJ Aldridge, low activity, if you ask me, has been what has held her back. Because any female as accurate as she is, they should make their way up through the rankings. So, we'll see what they do with JJ Aldridge. Now, listen, earlier today I made a video. It was a prediction video. And I gave Manon a 35% chance. I think she has a higher chance than that. I feel like I lowballed her. With that. And I'm gonna give Manon, I'm gonna say this fight is 50-50. It's 50-50. And I may even be wrong about that. But I just think Manon is so patterned of a striker that Pavel and Shevchenko could very well come up with an answer for it. Manon is so locked in to striking the same way every time. Jab, jab, straight right or straight left. She's southpaw. You get too close, check hook. Manon likes to throw those leg kicks. I could easily see Shevchenko and her camp preparing for those leg kicks. And the thing is, Shevchenko's still a top-level counter striker. What happens when Manon, for the first time, finds herself getting countered? How will she respond to that? Will it throw off her own offense if for the first time she's getting countered? But Manon is big. And she's very good at sucking her opponents into how she wants the fight to go. That's my best way I could put it. Manon does that. See a lot of fighters, they try to avoid, they try to change up the tempo, change up the way the fight is going, and they just can't do it. They can't avoid that jab. They can't avoid the kicks. Most of them can't avoid the kicks, the jab. The boxing is too good for most of these girls. And now this is interesting. We're seeing a lot of girls and MMA fighters in general benefit from boxing, and it's really not being pointed out. It's not being verbalized by a lot of these MMA pundits. A lot of these fighters who getting a lot of success in MMA, doing it almost strictly with boxing. Alexa Grasso, Manon Fiorot, JJ Aldrich, Jacqueline Cavalcante. You could really go down the list. And I don't know. Look, if boxing is that beneficial, build on it. And if you're building on it, I expect to see more than a 1-2. JJ, if her IQ is starting to go up with age, she better start throwing in a left hook after that 1-2. I know they train on it. You don't just train with a 1-2. You always 1-2. 1-2. 1-2-3. If you're hitting the bag, for example, you're always going to end up throwing a 1-2-3 in there. Always. I got a heavy bag in my apartment right now. I told y'all I rented a 2-bedroom apartment just to turn one of them into a gym. I've had a heavy bag my whole life. I know how people box. Don't nobody just practice on a 1-2. Show some evolution. Take chances. Especially if your opponent's having a hard time with your 1-2. Take chances to build on that. Okay? They're going to be surprised. They're not going to be ready for that third shot if they're not used to you throwing it. You know, it's a good idea to just use a 1-2 in the first round. Make your opponent think that's all you're prepared to throw. But don't, toward the end of the round, you're still throwing the same combination. It just shows a lack of evolution, in my opinion. I don't know. Go back and look at her fights. Her early fights, JJ Aldrich. She was still a boxer, but she was more active and more light on her feet. I do think she's evolved. Her cerebral is evolved. Her IQ is evolved. She's more accurate. But she was accurate back then and definitely had higher volume. I don't think they necessarily stunk up the card. Like I told y'all, I largely judge the women based on, I take into consideration the fight before them. And the fight before them, there was a lot of speed and power, explosiveness with the men. But it wasn't so brutal that it made Aldrich and Lee's fight look like, two little bunnies in there tap dancing and pillow fighting. Right? So, yeah, I give Manon I'm going to say it's 50-50. Shevchenko is up against it, no matter who she fights, if you ask me. Even possibly if it's Erin Blanchfield. These are new styles. They're not fading fighters. Fading fighters who's, pretty flawed. Jessica Ai, Lauren Murphy, even, let's say, Jessica Andrade. How many people smoked Andrade? She clearly has a glaring weakness. I'm going to throw Andrade in there too. This ain't that era no more. Okay? And you got athletic freaks moving up, like Silva. Santos was somewhat of a freak, but not as much as some of the other girls we've seen. And I think some of the other girls in this division would have defeated Santos as well. So we'll see. Hey, shout out to Shevchenko. She has a big ego. She's willing to ride this through. She might be like Wei Lee. She might be like Rose. For example, Wei Lee and Rose a lot different than Joanna. Joanna's retired. Joanna was like Ronda Rousey. They can't take losing too much, too often. Take a different type of fighter to fight back after you've lost the gold. To get knocked down in the rankings or beaten up or be on a losing streak, fight back and get the belt back like Wei Lee did. So we'll see. There are definitely levels to this game. Yeah, Andrea Lee has broken the record, and she holds the record for the women. The only fighters who had a longer win streak than her was men. I think it was Ferguson with 8 and somebody else with 7. It was 2 guys. Ferguson had 8, and I'm thinking not Gaethje. Somebody else had 7-fight losing streak. So yeah, rough night for Andrea Lee. We'll see where they go from here, and I will land my plane there.